Hey there, hope you're doing well. I've got another knife book or book on knives to review with you. It's the Remington Knives Past and Present Identification and Value Guide by Ron Stewart and Roy Ritchie. I've been after this book for quite a while, but like a lot of these old books on traditional knives and vintage knives, it's been out of print for a while and they're kind of hard to find. But I would say that Remington knives, at least vintage Remington knives, have to be one of the most collectible vintage knives. Probably maybe only second to Case vintage knives. Because Remington, while they only made knives for about 20 years, between 1920 and 1940, they made a lot of them. They made them in a great variety, and they were very high quality, so they were very highly regarded. So today they're very collectible. Plus, since 1982, they've been reintroducing knives, and they have a modern knife program where they put their name on knives made by other U.S. manufacturers. So they've kept the name alive, and people collect both the vintage and the more modern limited editions and reproductions and things like that. I own about I own exactly 9 Remington knives. You see them there on the table. 5 of them are official Boy Scout of America knives. That's kind of how I got introduced to Remington knives, vintage Remington knives, because I collect the Boy Scout of America knives from before World War II. So a lot of those are going to be Remington. And I've been able to collect a couple more interesting vintage Remingtons, and I've picked up a couple of the modern bullet knife reproductions. So I'll talk about this maybe just real quickly toward the end, but let's talk about the book first. It's, I think, a really good little book. I was able to get this one, very clean copy, for about 35 bucks. Shipped to me, I think, like $39. I think, though, if you're going to get a copy, you'll be lucky if you get one that low priced. Again, this has been out of print since 2005, and unfortunately what people do if they have a copy, they want to sell it like a collectible and make money on it, so it's kind of hard to find one that's anywhere near what, this book probably sold for, I don't know, $6, $17 when it was new, $16.95. So yeah, I'm fortunate to get it for that. Anyway, let's take a quick look at it. The first thing I want to do is show you the foreword, because it's kind of neat. It's actually from a 1930 wholesaler's catalog from Remington, and talks about their manufacturing facilities, their state-of-the-art factory at the time. They're very proud of how they made their steel, and it also talks about their advertising campaign, how they support the sales of the knives through a very extensive advertising campaign. All things that would be important to you if you were selling those knives as a retailer. And there's a couple of pages on Remington history that's very helpful. It's a great picture here of the cutlery and ammunition works at Bridgeport, Connecticut, circa 1929. Just look how big that is. Yeah, so Remington came out of World War I with this huge capacity for making arms, and the government didn't need all those arms anymore, so they said, what are we going to do with all this excess capacity? Well, they started making cutlery, bicycles, typewriters, and things like that. They just about went bankrupt in the mid-30s. DuPont bought them. They were making like 1,000 different varieties of knives, and DuPont brought that down to about 300. Here's a little section on the parts of a Remington knife, and they use a Scout knife to show that, because Scout knives use just about every part that they made. I found a couple things interesting here. Remington was particularly proud of its Scout knives, and also Remington produced Boy Scout of America knives without profit so that every Boy Scout could afford one. Isn't that something? They sold these at cost to Boy Scouts. You could buy that knife for $1.75. Wow. Here's the blade patterns they used. Not just one page there, but 3 full pages of different blade shapes and patterns. This is that great saber ground long clip blade that they put on their camp knife. That's just a great blade. There's a page here on Remington shields. I found this kind of helpful. They have what they call profile shields. That would include like your famous Scout hat shield and your acorn shield, your bullet shield. Then medallion shields, that would be your Boy Scout shields, Girl Scout shields, some other things. Crest shields and bar oval shields. Then they go into the numbering system. Remington had an excellent numbering system. You could tell a lot from the knife just by the model number or the number stamped on the tang. Also, they used pyramite, which was their trade name for celluloid, quite a bit. And had look at all these different varieties of covers you could get made out of celluloid. Back to the numbering system, it's kind of interesting, but they reserved like the first 3,000 for jackknives, the next 3,000 for what they called middle class knives. Those would be like your cattle knives, your Stockmans, your scout knives, multi-blade knives. And then the last 3,000 numbers basically were for pen knives. You can see how many different knives they were making. Here's just a little flyer, I guess, when DuPont owned Remington there in the late 30s on how to sharpen and oil your knife and keep it up to snuff. There, 1936 Remington catalog. And then there's a section in here that's on handle materials. And this says, our wish, this is the authors talking here, writing, our wish was to have had these examples produced in color. However, neither examples nor color photos were available at press time. So it's unfortunate that these are all black and white, but you get an idea. They go through all the handle materials, and there's a bunch of them. They made, they used different woods, rosewood, redwood, cocobolo, ebony. They used metals. They had solid brass knives. They used all this pyramite. They used stag. They used horn. They used buffalo horn. And they did it all. Yeah, and one thing I want to point out, I think I've got it marked here somewhere, is that their mother of pearl knives must have been really nice. Remington assured its customers that Remington pearl is superior in luster, in thickness, and finish to pearl knives of similar size produced by other manufacturers. And then there was one thing here that I found interesting. Pyramite, a celluloid type material made from the nitration of gun cotton, whatever that means. But according to Remington, it was not flammable. Celluloid's highly flammable. And, I earlier in a video speculated it was called pyramite because of pyro, meaning fire, but I guess not. They say it's not flammable. The main section of the book is on pocket knives. And that's what Remington mostly produced, was pocket knives. I'll show you some other things they produced in cutlery, but it was mostly pocket knives. And again, they did that for the 20 years between the two world wars. What the authors have done here is they've gathered images from old Remington catalogs and catalogs of sellers like big old line hardware stores, and put them all in one place. It's probably the largest collection of images of Remington knives you can find anywhere, instead of trying to go through one catalog at a time or go all through the internet. They're all right here. These are just the pocket knives. What they've done for each knife is they've given the image and they've given the pattern number. Right here, this is the R1. This is the very first pattern, a simple jackknife. Tell you about the blades, how many, the shape, their type of blade, the handle material, the shield if it had one, and the close length. Followed by their estimate of that knife in mint condition circa 2005. So take that with a grain of salt. These values are just, whatever, but it's a great identification guide because it gives you enough information and a good picture, that if you're trying to buy one of these on eBay or something, that you can see that it matches what's in here. It's not been put together crazy or something. So a lot of knives in there to look at. Sorry, I'm holding this a little too close to the camera, but my arms are just not long enough. A couple things I want to show you here is that they also produce letter openers. I don't know who would collect those, but there's only 2 pages of them here, about, 6 there, letter openers. But they also made fixed blade knives. Now I don't collect any of those, but they did make fixed blade knives, and there are the different varieties and models with their sheaths. Now, like this section, this shows you the different some of their advertising. Remington had a very strong print advertising campaign to support the sale of these knives, and that was kind of one way they got retailers to sell them. They said, look, we'll support you, and they'll sell well, and they did. So one thing that struck me in looking through here First of all, it's really fun because it's so dated, you know, just the language they use and the images they use and everything is from the 20s and 30s. It's like, wow, gee whiz, mister, that's a swell knife. You know, that's really pretty interesting. But they also really emphasize their scout knives in these ads. And see, there's one. And that six-bladed camp knife. What is that? The R3843. So, you know, there's another image of one. That cost you all of $4. Oh my God, there's some more Boy Scout knives. Some boys' knives, huh? Remind you of those GEC boys' knives? On a chain there. So anyway, great stuff. Spent a lot of time with that. Here's an image of a display case that was made available for retailers to show off the Remington knives and help sell them. Here's an image of the wax paper that the knives would be wrapped in. They took that opportunity also to remind you how to sharpen them and oil them. Now, the title of this book is Remington Knives Past and Present. So again, you know, Remington didn't make any knives after 1940 until 1982, and they contracted for other U.S. manufacturers to make their knives. The first being Camillus, started bringing back the bullet knives in 1982. So this first section here on the modern knives is about the bullet knife reproductions. And they've got a color photo of each one here. And again, a value and a little description of it. But this only runs up to 2004 because this book was printed in 2005. Remington's continued to produce the bullet knife and other knives up until today, 2020. So this book is going to fall a little short of that. Yeah, they only go up through 2004. Another really nice feature in this book is that starting in 1982 up until I think like 1997, they supported the sale of these knives by coming out with a poster each year. It was the first time that artwork on a knife had been sold along with the knife. And collectors got very excited about these posters, and some of these posters are worth more than the knives. But they were just great. They were all, they were big. They're big posters, and they were really good artwork, and they all depicted some really epic scene of outdoor adventure. You know, some imminent threat being solved and someone being saved with a Remington pocket knife. So, for instance, this one is the bad time for a snag, and it shows, you know, it's for the trapper. It shows these two old trappers coming down the river with this huge moose rack here. Their loose line has caught a snag in the river. It's about to overturn their canoe in the rapids. You know, they're just barely hanging on, and this other pair of guys comes up. Somehow this guy has found time to search around in his pockets, find his folding knife, take it out, open it with two hands, and cut that line. So I'm thinking a fixed blade knife would have been probably quicker, but there's the trapper. And they did that every year. I think they skipped 1 year, and then they later brought that one out. But here's one, Trouble on the Trail. Here's one in the nick of time. The guy's being threatened by hungry wolves. He's in a cave. He's trying to get a fire started to hold him at bay. He's making the kindling with his knife. Yeah, here's a guy being attacked by a bear, and his rifle is caught on a snag. He's cutting the shoulder strap so he can destroy the bear. Two on the line. That's great. I have the trap, the muskrat, so this is pretty cool. This is a guy setting his traps, and he turns around in a big wolverine, which are mean as hell, by the way. I've heard. I've never been probably within 1,000 miles of one, but he's stealing the trout out of his fishing basket there. All kinds of great stuff, so I won't keep going with that. Oh, this is a good one. Helping the old sport out. Bears coming in the back, and they're going out the front. And I had this knife. This was their camp knife. And this one's called Time's a Wasting Son. And, you know, you can imagine it's a father and a son. If you look, they've been out camping with their camping or fishing with their dog. And a storm is approaching before they can get back to safety. So they're building themselves a little emergency shelter real quick. It looks like Junior's doing all the work and Dad's enjoying the smoke. There's a section back here on the silver bullet knives. These were more exclusive bullet knives that Smoky Mountain Knife Works Did as a special factory orders from Camillus. They had upgraded materials, and they only ran, you know, a shorter period of time, but they're all covered here in the book as well. And then they get into some other bullet knives that were like Damascus steel, and then they get into some anniversary knives and other like limited edition series knives like the Wildlife series and things like that. Finally, here are some other books by the authors, Stewart and Ritchie. Big book of pocket knives. This is pretty cool. This is a Cattaraugus reprint of their couple of their catalogs. And I have this book, the Standard Knife Collector's Guide. But like so many of these books, you know, this book last printed in 2005 out of print. The Standard Knife Collector's Guide, I think 2003. Levine's Guide to Knives and Their Values. This is kind of the Bible here. It's probably the most comprehensive of all the books I have covering old traditional American pocket knives. It's not totally comprehensive. You need the other books too and the other sources to kind of find what you need, but great book. 2001, I think, was the last one. Here's a very popular book people use to identify and date knives by the tang stamps, Coins Encyclopedia of Cutlery Markings, 1998. So it's kind of hard to find these, and again, sometimes when you do, people want a little too much for them. Excuse me, dropping things here, but again, if you look hard enough and stay patient, you can probably pick these up. Again, I got this for $35, $4 shipping. I want to thank this seller, if you should ever see this. I can't remember what his name was. He was on All About Pocket Knives, and that's a really great deal because this is a clean copy. It looks almost new. Just quickly, my Remington knives, you know, I'm going to have to get my notes here to remember the numbers. Hello, I'm back. These are my Scout knives. The first three are going to be the RS 3333s. They just have different shields from different time periods. This is a 3.5-inch Scout knife, RS 4783. So RS 3333s, 4783, RS 4293 is the little guy here, 3 3/8. And this is a non-official Scout knife, but it's the same knife, except it has, instead of jig bone, it's got these pyramite scales in the flag pattern. Really cool knife. That's R4235. And then my last vintage Remington is that camp knife, the R3843. And this is just the coolest knife ever. It's a copy of the Boker, famous Boker sports messer that they've been making a lot longer. But this is the American version of it. And by God, they made a good one. I mean, they stole away cutlers from Soligen and Sheffield. And those guys showed them how to make a knife. That's a great knife. And then I have a couple of reproductions. This is the, I think, the 1988 silver bullet reproduction of the R4466. They call it the Little Muskrat. Camillus did a great job with these. And then I have a R1128. This is from 1989. This is the Jumbo Trapper in Cocobolo. I've done videos on all of those if you care to hunt them down and look them up. But there's just a quick overview of my Remington knives and an in-depth look at Remington knives, past and present. Appreciate you watching, I really do. Thanks so much, and have fun collecting.